The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Commander Sarah Mitchell adjusted her tactical gear one final time. At 32, she had already accomplished more than most soldiers could dream of in an entire career. Her hands, calloused from years of rigorous training and countless missions, moved with practiced precision as she checked her equipment. Today marked the end of her most challenging assignment yet, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to unfold. Sarah had grown up in a small farming town in Iowa, where the biggest excitement was the annual county fair. Her father, Robert Mitchell, was a Vietnam veteran who rarely spoke about his service, but the weight of his experiences hung heavy in their modest home. Her mother, Linda, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, often coming home with stories that reminded Sarah of the fragility of life. It was this combination of her father's quiet strength and her mother's compassion that first planted the seeds of service in young Sarah's mind. The decision to join the military hadn't been easy. Sarah remembered the night she told her parents about her plans to enlist. The dinner table fell silent as she explained her desire to serve her country, to push herself beyond what anyone thought possible. Her father's eyes had filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pride mixed with fear. He knew better than anyone what military service could demand of a person. Basic training had been brutal, but Sarah thrived under pressure. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands, she found herself energized by the challenge. The mental fortitude required was something else entirely. Night after night, she would lie in her bunk, muscles aching, mind racing with doubts about whether she truly belonged in this world dominated by men who seemed born for warfare. It was during advanced infantry training that Sarah first encountered the casual dismissiveness that would follow her throughout her career. A gruff sergeant, his face weathered by decades of service, had looked her up and down during weapons training and declared, "Little lady, maybe you should consider a desk job. This isn't a place for someone who might break a nail." The comment had stung, but it also ignited something fierce within her. Sarah's response wasn't verbal. Instead, she proceeded to outshoot every recruit in her class, her shots clustering tightly in the center of targets while others struggled to hit the broadside of a barn. The sergeant's expression shifted from condescension to grudging respect, but the damage was done. Sarah realized she would have to prove herself again and again, that her gender would always be scrutinized in ways her male counterparts never experienced. The path to becoming a Navy SEAL was treacherous for anyone, but for a woman, it seemed almost impossible. When the military finally opened all combat roles to women, Sarah was among the first to volunteer for the grueling selection process. The statistics were sobering. Less than 20% of male candidates successfully completed SEAL training, and no woman had ever achieved the distinction. Hell Week pushed Sarah to her absolute limits. 5.5 days of continuous training with a maximum of 4 hours of sleep total. Candidates were subjected to physical and mental challenges designed to break all but the most determined. Sarah watched as men twice her size rang the bell, signaling their withdrawal from the program. The instructors seemed to pay special attention to her, as if waiting for the moment she would crack. During one particularly brutal exercise, carrying heavy boats above their heads for miles, Sarah's team began to falter. The men around her, exhausted beyond measure, started to stumble. Without hesitation, Sarah adjusted her position to bear more of the weight, her muscles screaming in protest. Her voice, hoarse from the salt air and constant shouting, rallied her teammates. "We don't quit," she gasped between labored breaths. "We don't leave anyone behind." That moment became legendary among her class. The instructors, many of whom had harbored doubts about a woman's ability to perform under extreme stress, watched in amazement as Sarah essentially carried her entire team through the exercise. It wasn't just physical strength that impressed them, though she had plenty of that. It was her unwavering commitment to the SEAL ethos of teamwork and perseverance. After successfully completing SEAL training, Sarah was assigned to a specialized unit focused on counterterrorism operations. Her first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where the reality of combat replaced the controlled chaos of training exercises. The weight of live ammunition, the knowledge that enemies lurked behind every corner, and the responsibility for her teammates' lives created a pressure unlike anything she had experienced. Her unit's first major operation was a raid on a compound suspected of harboring high-value targets. As they approached under cover of darkness, Sarah's heart pounded against her body armor. The months of preparation culminated in these crucial moments where split-second decisions could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The compound erupted in gunfire as they breached the main building. Sarah's training took over, her body moving with fluid precision as she cleared rooms and secured objectives. In the midst of the chaos, she noticed movement from a secondary building that intelligence reports had deemed empty. Against protocol, she made a decision that would haunt her for years to come. Racing toward the building, Sarah discovered a group of civilians, including children, being held hostage by enemy combatants. The tactical situation was complex with limited time and resources. She had to choose between following orders to retreat and risking everything to save innocent lives. Her decision to engage potentially saved a dozen civilian lives, but it also exposed her team to additional risk. The aftermath of the mission was complicated. While the hostages were successfully rescued and valuable intelligence was gathered, Sarah's decision to deviate from orders sparked intense debate within the command structure. Some viewed her actions as heroic and emblematic of the values the military fought to protect. Others saw them as reckless and potentially dangerous to unit cohesion. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, her commanding officer, was a career military man who had served multiple tours in various conflict zones. He had initially been skeptical about having a female SEAL in his unit, not out of prejudice, but from genuine concern about how the dynamics might change. After the compound raid, his perspective shifted dramatically. Mitchell, he called her into his office the day after the operation. What you did out there was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've witnessed in 20 years of service. Sarah stood at attention, unsure how to respond. But those kids are going home to their families tonight because of your decision. That's what we're fighting for. The validation meant everything to Sarah, but she also understood the delicate balance she had to maintain. Excellence was expected, but too much deviation from protocol could undermine her credibility. She walked a tightrope between proving her capabilities and fitting into an established military culture. Her reputation grew through subsequent missions. Fellow SEALs, initially wary of working with a woman, began to request assignments with Sarah's unit. Her tactical acumen, combined with an intuitive understanding of complex situations, made her an invaluable team member. More importantly, her presence seemed to elevate the performance of those around her. During a particularly challenging hostage rescue mission in Syria, Sarah's unit was pinned down by enemy fire. Standard protocols called for air support, but civilian casualties would have been inevitable. Sarah identified a narrow window of opportunity that required precise timing and exceptional marksmanship. Her plan was risky, requiring her to expose herself to enemy fire while providing cover for her team's advance. The execution was flawless. Sarah's shots eliminated key threats while her teammates moved into position. The hostages were rescued without a single casualty, and enemy combatants were either captured or neutralized. The mission became a textbook example of small unit tactics and was studied by military academies worldwide. As news of her accomplishments spread throughout the military hierarchy, Sarah began receiving attention she never sought. Media outlets wanted interviews, military officials wanted photo opportunities, and politicians wanted to use her story for their own purposes. She declined most requests, preferring to focus on her duties rather than become a symbol or spokesperson. The pressure of constant scrutiny took its toll. Every mistake was magnified. Every success was analyzed for broader implications about women in combat roles. Sarah found herself representing not just her own performance, but the potential of all women who might follow in her footsteps. The weight of that responsibility was sometimes overwhelming. During rare moments of downtime, Sarah would call her parents from secure locations around the world. Her father, now in his 70s, had softened with age and pride in his daughter's achievements. Her mother worried constantly, but understood the calling that drove Sarah to serve. These conversations provided emotional anchors in a world of constant danger and uncertainty. The mission that would change everything began like so many others. Intelligence reports indicated a high-value target was planning an imminent attack on civilian infrastructure. Sarah's unit was tasked with infiltrating a heavily fortified compound and either capturing or eliminating the threat. The operation required weeks of preparation and coordination with multiple agencies. As Sarah prepared for what she sensed would be a defining moment in her career, she couldn't have imagined that a casual comment from a fellow soldier would set in motion events that would alter her life forever. The respect she had earned through years of exemplary service was about to be tested in ways she never anticipated. The evening before the mission, Sarah stood on the base perimeter, looking out at the desert landscape that had become familiar territory. The stars above seemed impossibly bright, unmarred by the light pollution of civilian areas. In these quiet moments, she often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a farm girl in Iowa to one of the most respected special operations soldiers in the military, Sarah's path had been marked by determination, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. She had broken barriers not through publicity or political maneuvering, but through consistent performance under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Tomorrow's mission would test everything she had learned, every skill she had developed, and every relationship she had built within the military structure. Unknown to her, it would also set the stage for a moment that would demonstrate just how far her reputation had reached through the highest levels of military command. As she turned to head back to her quarters, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in a window. The face looking back at her bore little resemblance to the young woman who had left Iowa years earlier. This was the face of a warrior, marked by experience, hardened by combat, but still maintaining the compassion that had initially drawn her to serve others. The morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, and perhaps new recognition of the remarkable soldier she had become. But tonight, Sarah Mitchell was simply a servant of her country, preparing to do her duty regardless of personal cost or recognition. The mission briefing room hummed with quiet intensity as Sarah Mitchell reviewed the tactical plans one final time. Around her, 12 of the most elite soldiers in the world prepared for what intelligence sources suggested would be their most critical operation to date. The target compound, nestled in the mountainous region between two hostile territories, housed a terrorist cell planning coordinated attacks on civilian targets across 3 countries. Captain Rodriguez, the mission commander, spread detailed satellite photographs across the central table. His weathered hands traced potential entry routes while his gravelly voice outlined the challenges they faced. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a standard raid. We're dealing with sophisticated defenses, including electronic surveillance, and trained combatants who won't hesitate to use civilians as shields. Sarah studied the aerial imagery with practiced eyes, identifying potential obstacles and alternative strategies. Her reputation for tactical innovation had earned her a seat at these high-level planning sessions, where her input was genuinely valued rather than merely tolerated. The transformation from outsider fighting for acceptance to trusted team leader had taken years of unwavering dedication. The compound consisted of 3 main buildings connected by underground tunnels. Intelligence reports indicated approximately 15 to 20 armed individuals, plus an unknown number of civilian personnel who might be either hostages or willing participants. The complexity of distinguishing between combatants and non-combatants in such scenarios always weighed heavily on Sarah's mind. As the briefing continued, Sarah's attention was momentarily diverted by the arrival of several high-ranking officers who quietly took seats at the back of the room. She recognized some faces from previous operations, but others were unfamiliar, their rank insignia indicating positions far above her current pay grade. Their presence suggested this mission carried implications beyond the immediate tactical objectives. The infiltration plan called for a 3-pronged approach. Sarah would lead a team of 4 soldiers through the eastern approach, taking advantage of natural terrain features that provided concealment from electronic surveillance. Meanwhile, 2 additional teams would create diversions from the north and west, drawing attention away from the primary assault route. Sergeant Mike Thompson, a veteran of countless special operations missions, approached Sarah as the briefing concluded. His initial skepticism about serving alongside a female SEAL had long since transformed into genuine respect and friendship. "Mitchell, I've been thinking about that eastern approach. The satellite images show vegetation that could provide better cover than we initially thought." Sarah appreciated Thompson's tactical insights. Despite their different backgrounds and approaches to problem solving, they had developed an effective working relationship built on mutual trust and shared commitment to mission success. "I noticed that too," she replied, pointing to specific areas on the photograph. "If we adjust our timeline by 30 minutes, We can take advantage of the shadow patterns created by those rock formations. The modification was subtle, but potentially crucial. Special operations often succeeded or failed based on seemingly minor details that created decisive advantages. Sarah's suggestion demonstrated the kind of battlefield awareness that had earned her the respect of peers who initially viewed her presence as an unwelcome experiment. As the teams dispersed to make final preparations, Sarah found herself alone with the tactical planning materials. She had developed a habit of spending extra time studying mission parameters, searching for overlooked details that might prove important under stress. This meticulous preparation had saved lives on previous operations and was part of what distinguished exceptional soldiers from merely competent ones. The weight of responsibility never got easier to bear. Each mission placed the lives of her teammates in her hands, while simultaneously requiring split-second decisions that could affect innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Sarah had learned to compartmentalize these pressures, focusing on controllable factors while accepting the inherent uncertainties of combat operations. Her equipment check was thorough and methodical. Every piece of gear was examined, tested, and positioned for optimal accessibility. Her primary weapon, a customized rifle that had become an extension of her body through thousands of hours of training, received particular attention. The relationship between a sniper and her weapon was intimate and absolute, requiring complete confidence in its reliability. Communication equipment underwent similar scrutiny. In the chaos of combat, clear communication could mean the difference between coordinated success and catastrophic failure. Sarah tested each frequency, verified backup channels, and ensured her team understood the specific protocols they would employ if primary systems were compromised. The psychological preparation was equally important, but more difficult to quantify. Sarah had developed personal rituals that helped center her mind before dangerous operations. She would spend several minutes in quiet meditation, visualizing potential scenarios and her responses to them. This mental rehearsal helped reduce reaction time when actual situations unfolded. As evening approached, Sarah joined her team for their final meal before deployment. The conversation was deliberately light, touching on topics far removed from the dangerous work ahead. These moments of normalcy provided psychological relief and reinforced the bonds that would prove crucial when they faced adversity together. Private First Class Chun, the youngest member of their team, seemed nervous despite his extensive training. Sarah recognized the signs, having experienced similar anxiety before her first major operations. "Chun," she said quietly, drawing him aside from the group, "you've trained for this moment your entire military career. Trust your preparation and trust your teammates." Her words carried weight because they came from personal experience rather than abstract theory. Sarah remembered her own first combat deployment, when despite all her training, the reality of potentially taking human lives had seemed overwhelming. A senior officer had offered similar encouragement, and she felt compelled to provide the same support for the next generation of warriors. The insertion would take place under cover of darkness, with the team approaching the target location via helicopter to a landing zone several miles from the compound. From there, they would navigate on foot through terrain that offered both opportunities for concealment and risks of discovery. Weather conditions were favorable, with cloud cover providing additional protection from surveillance. At 2,100 hours, the helicopters lifted off from the forward operating base. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of nervous energy transforming into focused determination. The rhythm of the rotor blades created a hypnotic background as she reviewed the mission parameters one final time. Her teammates settled into their own pre-combat routines, checking equipment and preparing mentally for the challenges ahead. The pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. 5 minutes to the landing zone. Weather is holding steady. No signs of enemy activity in the area. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly, a normal physiological response that she had learned to recognize and control. Years of training had taught her to channel adrenaline into enhanced performance rather than allowing it to impair decision-making. The helicopter touched down briefly, just long enough for the team to exit and disappear into the darkness. As the aircraft departed, leaving them alone in hostile territory, Sarah felt the weight of command settle onto her shoulders. From this moment until mission completion, every decision would be hers to make. The terrain proved more challenging than satellite imagery had suggested. Rocky outcroppings and Unexpected vegetation required constant route adjustments, but also provided better concealment than anticipated. Sarah's team moved with practiced stealth, each soldier maintaining assigned spacing while remaining alert for signs of enemy presence. 2 hours into their approach, they encountered their first obstacle. A patrol of 2 enemy combatants was moving along their planned route, forcing a difficult decision about timing and positioning. Sarah had seconds to evaluate options: wait for the patrol to pass, potentially missing their assault window, or neutralize the threats with the risk of alerting other defenders. She chose a third option, directing her team to adjust their route slightly to avoid contact entirely. The decision added 15 minutes to their timeline, but preserved the element of surprise that was crucial to mission success. It was the kind of tactical flexibility that had become Sarah's trademark, finding creative solutions to complex problems. As they reached the final observation point, Sarah could see the target compound clearly for the first time. The buildings were exactly as described in the intelligence briefings, but the defensive positions were more sophisticated than expected. Additional guards were visible, and electronic surveillance equipment had been upgraded since the satellite images were captured. Through her communication equipment, Sarah relayed the updated intelligence to the mission commander. Primary target confirmed, but defensive posture is enhanced. Recommend proceeding with modified approach timeline. The ability to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining mission objectives was one of the skills that distinguished elite units from conventional forces. The other assault teams reported similar discoveries, forcing real-time adjustments to the carefully planned operation. Sarah found herself in the position of providing tactical recommendations to officers who outranked her significantly, a responsibility she took seriously while recognizing the trust it represented. As 0 hour approached, Sarah's team moved into their final assault positions. Each soldier knew their specific responsibilities and understood the critical timing required for the coordinated attack. The months of training and preparation had led to these crucial minutes where their skills would be tested under the most demanding circumstances possible. The compound erupted in controlled chaos as all 3 teams initiated their assault simultaneously. Sarah's team moved with lethal efficiency, clearing their assigned objectives while maintaining communication with the other units. The enemy response was fierce but disorganized, exactly what the tactical plan had been designed to achieve. In the midst of the firefight, Sarah noticed something that intelligence reports had missed entirely. A 4th building, partially concealed by natural terrain features, showed signs of activity. The deviation from expected conditions required an immediate decision that could affect the entire mission's outcome. Without hesitation, Sarah directed 2 team members to investigate the unexpected structure while she continued with the primary objectives. The decision proved crucial when they discovered additional enemy combatants preparing to flank the main assault force. Her tactical awareness and quick thinking prevented what could have been a devastating counterattack. The mission concluded successfully, with all primary objectives achieved and minimal casualties among the assault force. As her team prepared for extraction, Sarah felt the familiar mixture of relief and exhaustion that followed intense combat operations. But she also sensed that something about this particular mission was different, that its implications would extend far beyond the immediate tactical victory. During the helicopter ride back to base, she noticed the same high-ranking officers from the mission briefing engaged in intense discussion. Their occasional glances in her direction suggested that her performance during the operation had not gone unnoticed. Sarah focused on her post-mission responsibilities, but couldn't shake the feeling that significant changes were approaching. The debriefing session stretched into the early morning hours as Sarah Mitchell and her team provided detailed accounts of the successful operation. Every aspect of the mission was dissected, analyzed, and documented for future reference. The conference room, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights, felt worlds away from the dangerous terrain they had navigated just hours earlier. Sarah noticed that the questions directed toward her were more detailed and probing than usual. Senior officers who rarely participated in standard debriefings asked specific questions about her tactical decisions, particularly her choice to investigate the unidentified building that had ultimately prevented enemy flanking maneuvers. Their interests seemed to extend beyond routine operational analysis. Colonel Patricia Hayes, a logistics officer Sarah had never met, posed particularly thoughtful questions about leadership under pressure. "Commander Mitchell, Can you walk us through your decision-making process when you encountered the unexpected force structure? What factors influenced your choice to divide your team's attention? The question required Sarah to articulate instincts and training that had become second nature. Ma'am, the initial intelligence suggested 3 buildings with specific defensive patterns. When I observed activity that didn't match those patterns, it indicated either incomplete intelligence or changing conditions. Both scenarios required immediate investigation to prevent tactical surprises. Her response demonstrated the analytical thinking that complemented her combat skills. Special operations demanded soldiers who could simultaneously execute complex physical tasks while making sophisticated strategic assessments. Sarah's ability to explain her reasoning clearly impressed the senior officers present. As the formal debriefing concluded, Captain Rodriguez approached Sarah privately. His expression was serious, but not disapproving, suggesting important news rather than disciplinary action. Mitchell, there are some people who want to speak with you. Higher-ups who have been following your career with considerable interest. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. Recognition from senior leadership was always gratifying, but it often came with increased scrutiny and expanded responsibilities. Her focus had always been on mission execution rather than career advancement, but she understood that exceptional performance sometimes attracted attention regardless of personal preferences. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon, giving Sarah time to rest and prepare mentally for whatever lay ahead. She spent the intervening hours completing routine post-mission tasks, equipment maintenance, personal hygiene, and brief communications with her family back in Iowa. These ordinary activities provided psychological balance after the intensity of combat operations. Her parents had learned not to ask detailed questions about her missions, understanding that much of her work remained classified. Instead, their conversations focused on family news, local events, and the simple reassurance that she was safe. These connections to her civilian roots helped maintain perspective on why she served and what she fought to protect. Sarah's reputation within the special operations community had grown steadily over her career, but she remained largely unknown to the general public. This anonymity was both professional necessity and personal preference. High-profile military figures faced unique security risks and media pressures that could interfere with operational effectiveness. The next morning brought news that added context to her upcoming meeting. Intelligence reports confirmed that the terrorist cell they had targeted was part of a larger network planning coordinated attacks across multiple continents. The intelligence gathered during their raid had already prevented 3 separate operations, potentially saving hundreds of civilian lives. Major Williams, her immediate supervisor, briefed her on the broader implications of their mission's success. Mitchell, what your team accomplished wasn't just another successful raid. The intelligence you gathered has given us insights into terrorist networks that we've been tracking for years. This could represent a significant turning point in our counterterrorism efforts. Understanding the true scope of their mission's impact added weight to Sarah's sense of accomplishment. Special operations soldiers rarely received comprehensive feedback about how their actions affected broader strategic objectives. Knowing that their dangerous work had produced tangible results in protecting innocent people reinforced her commitment to continued service. The scheduled meeting took place in a secure conference room Sarah had never seen before. The level of security protocols suggested the presence of very senior officials, possibly including individuals whose identities remained classified even from special operations personnel. She arrived precisely on time, wearing her dress uniform and carrying the professional bearing that had become her trademark. General Morrison, a 3-star general she recognized from military publications, stood as she entered the room. His presence alone indicated the significance of whatever discussion was about to unfold. Commander Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Please have a seat. Around the conference table sat several officers whose rank and bearing suggested positions at the highest levels of military command. Sarah recognized some faces from news coverage and official ceremonies, but others remained unfamiliar despite their obvious authority. The diversity of service branches represented suggested this meeting transcended normal chain of command structures. General Morrison began the discussion with a comprehensive review of Sarah's career accomplishments. His detailed knowledge of her service record, including classified missions that rarely appeared in official documents, indicated extensive preparation for this meeting. Commander, your performance over the past several years has been nothing short of extraordinary. You've consistently exceeded expectations while breaking new ground for women in special operations. The praise was gratifying, but also somewhat uncomfortable. Sarah had never sought recognition for her gender-related achievements, preferring to be evaluated purely on merit and performance. However, she understood that her success inevitably carried broader implications for military policy and social progress. Your tactical innovations have been studied and implemented by units throughout the special operations community, continued Admiral Chun, a senior Navy official. More importantly, your leadership under extreme pressure has earned respect from personnel at every level of command. That respect extends to this room and beyond. Sarah sensed that these comments were preliminary to more significant news. Senior officers didn't gather simply to offer congratulations, particularly not with the level of security and protocol surrounding this meeting. She maintained professional composure while preparing mentally for whatever revelation was approaching. General Rodriguez, whom Sarah knew by reputation as one of the military's most respected strategic thinkers, leaned forward to address her directly. "Commander, we've been monitoring not just your tactical performance, but your impact on unit morale and effectiveness. Teams that serve with you consistently perform above average, and that pattern has been consistent throughout your career." The observation was accurate, but surprising in its specificity. Sarah had noticed that her presence seemed to elevate team performance, but she had attributed it to the high standards expected of special operations units generally. Learning that this effect had been formally tracked and analyzed suggested levels of attention she hadn't realized existed. "We're facing evolving challenges in global security," explained General Morrison. "Traditional approaches to special operations are being supplemented by new strategies that require different skill sets and perspectives. Your unique combination of tactical excellence and innovative thinking positions you for expanded responsibilities." Sarah began to understand the direction of the conversation. The military was clearly considering new roles or assignments that would leverage her experience while potentially placing her in unprecedented positions. The thought was both exciting and daunting, representing opportunities for greater impact alongside increased pressure and scrutiny. The specific details emerged gradually through careful questioning and discussion. A new joint task force was being established to address emerging terrorist threats that transcended national boundaries and traditional military responses. The unit would require officers capable of operating independently while maintaining coordination with international partners and civilian agencies. "This isn't just another special operations assignment," clarified Admiral Chun. "You would be pioneering new approaches to asymmetric warfare while representing the United States in sensitive international cooperation efforts. The role requires someone with unquestioned tactical credentials and demonstrated diplomatic skills." Sarah realized that her reputation had expanded beyond military circles into policy and diplomatic spheres. Her ability to work effectively with diverse teams and adapt to complex cultural contexts had apparently been noted by officials responsible for international security cooperation. The opportunity represented a significant career advancement, but also a departure from the direct combat role she had mastered. The discussion continued for nearly 2 hours, covering operational parameters, reporting relationships, and strategic objectives. Sarah asked detailed questions about resources, authority levels, and success metrics, demonstrating the analytical approach that had characterized her military service. The senior officers seemed pleased by her thoughtful engagement with the complex responsibilities being outlined. As the meeting concluded, General Morrison provided her with classified briefing materials for private review. "Commander, we're not asking for an immediate decision. This represents a significant change in your career trajectory, and you should take time to consider all implications. However, I want you to understand that this opportunity exists because of your exceptional service and unique qualifications." Walking back to her quarters, Sarah felt the weight of momentous change approaching. The prospect of expanded responsibilities and new challenges was appealing, but it would also mean leaving behind the direct combat role that had defined her identity for years. The decision would affect not only her own career, but potentially the opportunities available to future generations of female special operations personnel. That evening, she called her parents to share what details she could about the career opportunities being presented. Their pride in her accomplishments was evident. But so was their concern about the increased dangers and responsibilities that seemed to accompany each promotion. The conversation reminded her that her choices affected not only herself but everyone who cared about her welfare. The classified briefing materials revealed the full scope of what was being proposed. The new task force would operate in some of the world's most dangerous regions, pursuing terrorist networks that conventional forces couldn't effectively engage. The work would be even more demanding than her current assignment, with higher stakes and greater autonomy than she had ever experienced. Sarah spent the following days reviewing the materials while continuing her regular duties. The contrast between routine training exercises and the strategic planning documents highlighted how dramatically her responsibilities could change. She found herself mentally preparing for challenges that would test every skill she had developed throughout her military career. The decision deadline was still weeks away, but Sarah sensed that her response was already becoming clear. The opportunity to serve at the highest levels of national security, to pioneer new approaches to protecting innocent people from terrorist threats, aligned perfectly with the values that had drawn her to military service initially. The increased risks and pressures were simply the price of making a greater impact. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this crossroads. From a farm girl in Iowa to a special operations commander being considered for unprecedented responsibilities, her path had been marked by constant challenge and continuous growth. Tomorrow would bring new training exercises and routine duties, but the future held possibilities she had never imagined when she first decided to serve her country. 6 months had passed since Sarah Mitchell accepted the Joint Task Force position, and the transition had proven even more challenging than anticipated. The Pentagon's corridors felt alien compared to the forward operating bases that had been her professional home for years. Instead of tactical gear and weapons, she now carried briefing folders and secure communication devices, symbols of her transformation from direct combat operator to strategic planner. The learning curve had been steep, but manageable, drawing on analytical skills that complemented her operational experience. Sarah found herself briefing senior officials on threat assessments, coordinating with international partners on counterterrorism initiatives, and developing policy recommendations based on field intelligence. The work was intellectually demanding, but lacked the immediate satisfaction of tactical missions. Her new office in a secure section of the Pentagon provided a stark contrast to the temporary shelters and field headquarters she had occupied throughout her career. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the Potomac River, while classified computer systems connected her to intelligence networks spanning the globe. The environment was professional and comfortable, yet she occasionally missed the austere functionality of military field operations. Colonel Hayes, her immediate supervisor in the task force, had become both mentor and advocate during the transition period. A career intelligence officer with extensive experience in international cooperation, Hayes understood the challenges of adapting from operational roles to strategic responsibilities. "Mitchell, you're making the adjustment faster than most officers who transition from field operations to policy work." The compliment was gratifying, but didn't entirely ease Sarah's occasional doubts about her career change. The abstract nature of strategic planning sometimes left her wondering whether her efforts were producing tangible results. Success metrics in policy work were often measured in prevented incidents rather than completed missions, making it difficult to assess personal impact. Her current assignment involved developing cooperative frameworks for international counterterrorism efforts in Southeast Asia. The work required understanding not only military capabilities, but also political constraints, cultural sensitivities, and economic factors that influenced each nation's approach to security challenges. The complexity was intellectually stimulating, but sometimes overwhelming. The morning briefing that would change everything began like dozens of others. Sarah entered the secure conference room, carrying her daily intelligence summaries, and prepared talking points for discussions with allied representatives scheduled later that day. The routine nature of the meeting provided no indication that it would become a pivotal moment in her career. General Morrison entered the room with an energy level that immediately captured everyone's attention. Behind him walked 4 individuals whose presence was both unexpected and significant. Sarah recognized them as some of the most senior military leaders in the country, including General Patricia Blackwood, the highest-ranking woman in the Army, and Admiral James Richardson, Chief of Naval Operations. The formality of their bearing suggested this wasn't a routine policy discussion. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she realized that something significant was about to unfold, though she couldn't yet determine what role she might play in whatever was developing. General Morrison called the meeting to order with uncharacteristic solemnity. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss a matter of exceptional importance to national security and military personnel policy. Recent events have highlighted the need for immediate action on issues we've been addressing through normal channels." Sarah noticed that despite the room full of senior officials, several pairs of eyes seemed focused specifically on her. The attention was both flattering and concerning, suggesting that whatever was being discussed would directly affect her responsibilities or position within the organization. "The terrorist network we've been tracking through joint international operations has evolved their tactics to specifically target female military and government personnel," General Morrison continued. "Intelligence indicates they view successful women in security roles as high-value propaganda targets that could undermine our operational effectiveness." The briefing took on personal relevance as Sarah realized that her own profile might have attracted enemy attention. Her transition to strategic roles had necessarily involved some public visibility, including meetings with allied officials and participation in policy conferences that could have provided opportunities for surveillance and targeting. Admiral Richardson addressed the room with the gravity that his position demanded. "We've received credible intelligence that Commander Mitchell's identity and role have been specifically identified by terrorist elements planning operations against U.S. personnel. This presents both security challenges and strategic opportunities that require careful consideration." Sarah felt the weight of unwanted attention settling on her shoulders. Throughout her career, she had worked to avoid publicity and maintain operational security, but the strategic nature of her current role apparently made complete anonymity impossible. The revelation that terrorists might view her as a specific target was both frightening and oddly validating. "The nature of these threats has prompted discussions at the highest levels of government about how we protect personnel while maintaining operational effectiveness," General Morrison explained. "Your situation, Commander Mitchell, has become a test case for policies that will affect military women throughout the services." The responsibility of serving as a policy test case was daunting, but not entirely surprising. Sarah had understood from the beginning that her career progression would inevitably influence opportunities and challenges for future generations of military women. She had simply hoped to set positive examples rather than become the center of security discussions. General Blackwood, whose own career had broken numerous barriers for women in the military, spoke directly to Sarah for the first time. "Commander, your performance in this assignment has exceeded all expectations. The strategic assessments you developed have influenced policy decisions affecting multiple theater commands. Your work is making a real difference in our national security posture." The validation was deeply meaningful coming from someone whose own career Sarah had studied and admired. General Blackwood's path through the military hierarchy had been pioneering in ways that created opportunities for officers like Sarah, making her approval particularly significant. "However," General Blackwood continued, "the security implications of your visibility require us to consider modifications to your current assignment. We're exploring options that would allow you to continue contributing at the strategic level while managing the risks associated with your public profile." Sarah realized that her career was once again approaching a crossroads, but this time the choice might not be entirely hers to make. Security considerations could override personal preferences and professional aspirations, forcing decisions based on threat assessments rather than career goals. The discussion that followed revealed the complexity of balancing security concerns with operational effectiveness. Too much protection could limit her ability to perform essential duties, while insufficient security measures could endanger not only Sarah, but also the personnel assigned to protect her. The calculus involved considerations that extended far beyond individual safety. As the briefing progressed, an unexpected element emerged that would prove pivotal to the day's events. Major General Stevens, whom Sarah had never met but recognized as a special operations commander, entered the room and approached General Morrison with obvious urgency. "Sir, we have a situation developing that requires immediate attention," General Stevens announced. "The terrorist cell Commander Mitchell's intelligence helped identify is currently moving toward a target in the Washington metropolitan area. We need her expertise for rapid threat assessment. The room's energy shifted dramatically as abstract policy discussions transformed into immediate operational requirements. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied urgent missions, her mind automatically shifting from strategic planning mode to tactical analysis. General Morrison turned to Sarah with a mixture of concern and determination. "Commander, I know this isn't what any of us planned for today, but your knowledge of this particular network could be crucial to preventing an attack. Are you prepared to provide immediate analytical support?" Without hesitation, Sarah responded with the confidence that had characterized her entire military career. "Yes, sir, absolutely. What intelligence do we have on their current location and intended target?" The next several minutes unfolded with controlled intensity as intelligence updates flowed into the room from multiple sources. Sarah found herself at the center of a rapid response effort that combined her strategic knowledge with real-time tactical requirements. The abstract policy work suddenly had immediate, tangible applications. As Sarah provided critical insights that helped shape the response strategy, she didn't notice that someone had quietly entered the room and taken a seat in the back corner. Sergeant Peterson, a young special operations soldier she had never met, had been called in to provide tactical support, but was struggling with the high-level nature of the discussion. Looking around the room full of senior officers, Peterson felt overwhelmed by the rank and responsibility surrounding him. When he spotted Sarah among the group, he made an assumption that would soon prove embarrassing, but ultimately revelatory. "Excuse me, miss," Peterson called out during a brief lull in the discussion, his voice carrying across the room with unfortunate clarity. "Could you give me some coffee? This is way above my pay grade, and I need caffeine to follow what these officers are discussing." The room fell silent as every person present processed what had just occurred. Peterson had assumed that the only woman in the room must be administrative support rather than one of the key participants in the strategic discussion. His request for coffee service revealed both unconscious bias and complete misunderstanding of Sarah's role and rank. Sarah turned to face Peterson with calm professionalism, though she felt the familiar sting of assumptions based on gender rather than competence. Before she could respond, something extraordinary happened that would become the defining moment of her career. General Morrison stood up slowly, his face reflecting both anger at the disrespect shown to Sarah and recognition of the broader issues her situation represented. Without saying a word, he moved to attention and rendered a perfect military salute to Sarah, his gesture acknowledging both her rank and her contributions to the ongoing operation. In rapid succession, General Blackwood, Admiral Richardson, and Major General Stevens followed suit, each rendering crisp salutes that filled the room with the sound of precise military bearing. The display of respect from four of the most senior officers in the United States military was unprecedented and profoundly moving. Sarah returned their salutes with the pride and professionalism that had marked her entire career, but she could feel tears forming in her eyes as the magnitude of the moment settled over her. Years of proving herself, of exceeding expectations, of breaking barriers had led to this instant of recognition at the highest levels of military command. Sergeant Peterson's face went white as he realized the enormity of his mistake. The woman he had asked to fetch coffee was not only a commissioned officer, but clearly someone whose expertise and contributions were valued by the most senior military leaders in the country. His error became a teaching moment about assumptions and respect that would influence his attitude for the rest of his career. The incident became legendary within Pentagon circles, spreading through informal networks as an example of both the challenges faced by women in the military and the respect that exceptional performance could earn regardless of gender. Sarah's expertise had proven crucial to preventing a terrorist attack, while the salutes from four generals demonstrated institutional recognition of her contributions. In the aftermath of the crisis, as the terrorist threat was successfully neutralized through coordinated efforts that relied heavily on Sarah's intelligence assessments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a farm in Iowa to the highest levels of national security policy, her path had been marked by challenges that tested every aspect of her character and capability. The respect symbolized by those four salutes represented not just personal achievement, but validation of the principle that excellence transcends traditional barriers. Sarah had proven that women could succeed at the highest levels of military service, opening doors for future generations while serving her country with distinction and honor. As she continued her work in the Joint Task Force, Sarah carried with her the knowledge that her career had already made a difference that extended far beyond her individual accomplishments. The memory of that moment when 4 generals saluted in recognition of her expertise and dedication would inspire her through whatever challenges lay ahead in her continued service to the nation.